This morning, we're going to begin a new series of teachings on God's vision for the generations. And maybe it'll be a series, I'm not sure. We'll just kind of see how it goes. There'll probably be a few teachings here over the coming months, but I don't want to make anything too hard and fast as far as what may or may not happen next week or the week after, all right? Because that's in his hands. But in the coming months, seriously, it really is. Seriously, this is a big deal to God. And there's actually a lot that I want to share with you about this over the coming months. It's a huge deal for God. Look back, let's go back 4,000 years more or less, the time of Abraham, and God's original promise to Abraham. Look at this in Genesis 17. This is how God deals with man. This is how he establishes his covenants. I'll establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. Wow. To be your God, your Father, your God, and the God of your descendants after you, the God of the generations. Yeah. And we see this actually throughout the scriptures, that God speaks to successive generations. He works with the generations, not just with individuals, not just with one generation. And he's done this from the very beginning of creation. He's always had a very clear vision for the generations. And everything we do should carry this vision for the generations. And so we're going to look in the coming months pretty deeply at God's interaction with the generations and our interactions between the generations. But before we can properly understand the generations, first we need to look at God himself, his nature, his being. And then we will have a little bit of an understanding of his perspective, of how he views the generations. So often when we think about the generations, we think in very small ways. When God thinks in really big ways. So today, we're going to look at three characteristics of God. His self-existence, his infinity, and his eternalness. Was that right? His eternicity. He's not offended if I made a mistake. Now, of course, there are many other characteristics of God, aren't there? There are lots of other attributes of God. But these are three that directly relate to how he views us and how he views the generations. So let's look firstly at God's self-existence. His self-existence. Isaiah 43. That you may know and believe me and understand that I am he. Before me, no God was formed, nor shall there be any after me. There's nothing else before God. No other gods. He is the original, only, true God. Yeah? Nothing else. And he would know this, by the way. If anybody would know if there were other gods, he would know, and he says, nope, there aren't. Now, what this means, that he's the only one for all of eternity, it means that he's not dependent on anyone or anything else for anything. It means he had no cause. Nothing came before him and then caused him. He always was. Yeah? No cause. before anything was created, he was perfect. He was complete. God literally has no unmet needs. Never has. Now he does not depend on anything or anyone else. He has never depended on anyone or anything else. He will never depend on anyone or anything else. This is the idea of self-existence. That he needs nothing. It's all from him. Look at this in Acts 27, and Paul is speaking to the Greek philosophers on Mars Hill. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands. Now we do have the privilege of serving him, but he doesn't need it. See, as though he needed anything. Doesn't need anything. Since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and like everything. He himself gives to all everything. He himself needs nothing. This is the reality, dear friends. He's self-existent or independent. And this is totally different from us. Because you had a beginning. You had a cause. Without your parents, you would never exist, yeah? And you continue to depend on others for everything. You need air, yeah? You're not self-existent. Take away the air, you're done. The water, the food, right? See, you don't have self-existence. You are dependent. God has self-existence. He needs nothing. Very different from you. And you need people around you. All the relationships and the world around you has made you what you are, right? You're entirely dependent on others, other things, other people, and in particular, we depend on God. Whether we're aware of it or not, man depends continually on God for everything. That's the reality. Literally everything. Your very existence is entirely dependent upon God continuously. Oh my goodness. That is the reality, dear friends. Look at this. Hebrews 1. The Son of God upholds the universe by the word of his power. He upholds it. That means he sustains it. He enables it to continue to exist. It's as if moment by moment God speaks to every atom in the universe, every particle. Yeah. The universe, guys. And universe here is not really universe. It's more what he said was everything. Every single thing is what he wrote. Every single thing. In the spiritual realm, in the physical realm, everything. God upholds it. See, he himself needs nothing. Everything else is totally dependent upon him for life, for existence. Not just for the occasional answer to prayer or, all that stuff, as wonderful as that is, but way more than that, guys. Whether you're conscious or of it or not, here's the reality. Here's another one. These are the two. It's Hebrews 1 and then Colossians 1. Fantastic. Revelations. The being of God. Here again, the Son of God is before all things, and in him all things hold together. It's just all things. And read Colossians 1 there, that little, 5 verses or something. I mean, it's like literally everything, seen and unseen, visible, invisible, past, present, future, all things totally dependent upon him. But he depends on nothing. Everything depends on him. And this is the biblical teaching. And I know that today there's a popular view in the church that God was very lonely in eternity, you know. And that's why he created man, to satisfy that longing in his soul, to satisfy his achy, breaky heart. And it's just that, you know, that kind of teaching, it sounds good, it appeals to our emotions, but it's not true. It's a sincere attempt to make God's love meaningful to people and accessible to people. I understand that. But it deeply dilutes the nature of God and the love of God. It's a very weak expression of God's love. It reduces God's love to such a small, human, sentimental thing, when his love is so far beyond that, so much bigger than that, so much more powerful than that. And when you see God for who he actually is, exalted, infinite, before all things, above all things, holds all things together, and yet he has invited you to know him, to know his love, and to love him back. Oh, wow! See, if I think that God depends on me for something, if he needs me, well then, you know, maybe I'll cooperate, maybe I won't. Lord, what's your offer to me to try to win my cooperation? What kind of deal can we make? Oh dear. See, there's no fear of God there, is there? We try to manipulate God, you know, by withholding our attention. You know, because he just can't live without me. And so, well, maybe I'll just sort of withhold my love. See if I can get what I want. You understand? You've never tried to do this. You know, God, what are you going to do to win me over? You know, you need me so much. Well, the reality is, he doesn't need you at all. For anything. He never has needed you. He never will. Never. But he invites you to surrender your life, everything to him, to know him, to love him, to serve him. He's invited you to be a part of his purpose. Wow. See, the reality is so much bigger, so much more powerful, and it's healthy. Then we fear God. We don't take him lightly or try to manipulate him, because we see him for who he is. And we surrender to him because he's God. What else are you going to do but surrender? But like lay down at his feet. Oh God, I'm undone and it's all you and I'm a worm, and you know, if that, then here I am. Yeah? That's healthy, dear friends. Surrender to him, to his purpose, to his way, and then to love him and to know his love, to experience his incredible, infinite love, as we heard again and again and again this morning in all of the sharing. Beautiful stuff. And as he gives himself then fully to us. Oh, he didn't have to. He doesn't need you, but he gives himself fully to you. Wow. So this is the first characteristic of God that we're going to look at least. And this affects how we view the generations. See, God doesn't need the generations. We need him. And from our side, we're all tempted to see our own generation as so special. Yeah, we do. And when you get old, like some of us, you know, you start to see these patterns. It's amazing. Every generation does this. You know, we're the special generation. We're the last generation. Ooh, gotcha. You know I did. I'm totally cool if we're the last generation. I'm delighted, in fact. Sooner the better. No worries. But it's natural to us. We all do it, guys. We're the generation that's going to change the world. You know, we're the generation. We do this in each generation. I'm not saying that to criticize anybody. Look, younger generation right now, you think I'm stepping on your toes. I'm not. We did it too. We were worse. So in each generation, we tend to get a bit self-absorbed, don't we? And to have a little higher opinion of ourselves than perhaps we ought to have. And we think and we act as if everything begins and ends with us. And we tend to ignore the debt that we owe to the previous generations. You know, if we're so special and amazing, then we don't need to listen to the previous generations and learn from them, do we? Who needs them when we're so incredible? We did it. And we tend to ignore our responsibilities to the next generation. Yeah? See, if we're the last generation, then why bother building the next one? My generation did this. We ignored the previous, and we ignored the next. You don't have to. See, listen to your previous generation and learn. You don't have to do it again. The generation before us did it too. The current generation is doing this. We need to come before Him very humbly, not centered on ourselves, but deeply surrendered to Him, His purposes. And His purposes connect over long periods of time, over many generations. It's how He works. We are weak, extremely weak. We are totally dependent on God. And we're dependent on the generations before us and the generations after us. That's the reality, dear friends. See, it's not just they're dependent on us. Do you understand? So when we see the generations from God's perspective and hear the self-existence of God, the independence of God, look at the generations from that perspective. He's independent. We are dependent. The second characteristic today we'll look at is God's infinity. And this is God's relationship to space and distance and created things. God's relationship to physical stuff or spiritual stuff. His relationship to created stuff. He is infinite. Here, back to Colossians 1. Fantastic few verses here about the Lord Jesus. In Him, in the Lord Jesus, all things were created. Things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones, powers, rulers, authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him. And He is before all things, and then in Him all things hold together. So He created all things. He created all things, which means that He Himself is not a part of that creation, which was actually one of Paul's points here when he's talking to the Colossians, because they were falling into an error that had the Lord Jesus as being the highest of the created world. And so Paul here is saying He's not a part of the created world. In Him, the Son of God, were all things created. See, He's different. He's fundamentally different from the entire created realm. That's His infinity. Infinity doesn't mean He's big. Infinity means He's in a realm outside of the created world. So it's bigger than big. Do you understand? It's like different. God, see, you could be like huge, but you've still got to go somewhere to get somewhere. Yeah? No matter how big you are. I mean, you could be as big as an ocean, and you've still got to actually physically move to get to the next ocean. Whatever that means. I don't know. But God doesn't have to move to go anywhere. He's outside of the created realm. Do you understand? Don't tell me you understand. Tricked you. I mean, do you get it? Now you're afraid to say that you do or don't. But this is the infinity of God. It's incredible, guys. He's beyond the created world. He's beyond all things. He's absolutely outside of any limitation of space or distance or anything that limits us. He doesn't have to go anywhere to be at the edge of the universe or to be in the next universe. In fact, he's there all at the same time, all at once. Oh my goodness. This is God. Fantastic. No limitation. Not subject to space, no limitations. His size can't be measured. Infinite. And not only infinite in size, but also infinite in knowledge. Look at this. Great is the Lord, greatly to be praised. His greatness is unsearchable. And that's beautiful poetry there, but it's not just poetry, it's a literal reality about God. Unsearchable. You can't know him. He's unknowable, unsearchable, unknowable. You can't figure him out. You can't define him. Wow. No, you can't. You can't know him at all. Except he reveals himself to you. Then you can. But in himself, he's infinite, unknowable, infinite in knowledge. He knows literally everything. Wow. Everything. Everything on the inside of you, everything on the outside of you. He knows what's happening right now, the movement of every atom of gas in a million universes away. He knows exactly. Every atom. He knows every thought, every tiny, momentary thought deep in your heart. Hebrews 4, nothing in creation is hidden from God's sight. See, infinite in knowledge. Everything's uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give account. Whoa! Is that scary? Huh? Ooh, it ought to be. One day we will give an account. Nothing's hidden to him. We hide things from each other. We hide things from ourselves. Yeah? We deceive ourselves. We live in our own illusions that we've created. But not from him. He knows it all. Extraordinary. Everything. All at the same time. Wow. So he's infinite in size. He doesn't even have size. He's beyond size. He's infinite in knowledge. He's beyond knowledge. It's just everything knows it. And he's infinite in power. Again, not just really, really, really powerful, but infinite in power. It's like he's in a whole realm above, you know? And this is why there's nothing too hard for him. This is why. It's because of his being, his nature. Infinite in power. And this is why you can trust him. Completely. Look at this passage here from, this is from Isaiah 40. Lift up your eyes on high and see who created these? The stars. All right? Lift up your eyes. You're in times of struggle. I know you are. Of course we are. We all are. We're in times of struggle and challenge and difficulty. Yeah? Pain, perhaps. So, lift up your eyes. Tonight, go outside. The stars. Who created these? He brings out their host by number, calling them all by name. Oh, I just read it the other day, how many stars there are in the visible universe. There's something like 1 trillion or something or other. I mean, not that you see 1 trillion, but that's how many there are that you sort of would see if you were able to see them. It's a really big number. Displaying my ignorance of astronomical things here. But look at this, calling them all by name. Whoa! By the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing. This is why, and I know you've got a challenge in your life. Is he able to handle it? Is it like too big for him? Huh? The stars, man. Not one of them is missing. And so why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God? See, they're saying, Israel is saying, this is the context of Isaiah's word, Israel is saying, we're neglected by God. My right, my cause is disregarded by God. My way is hidden from the Lord. I'm in bondage, I'm in distress, I'm in trouble, and it's like I'm hidden from him. He's not noticing me. This is what Israel's saying. Do you understand? This is the context of Isaiah's words. Why do you say this, people of God? Oh, he's not noticing. Does he not care? Yeah? Why do you say that? And then his response to you, have you not known? Have you not heard? Whoa. The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. See, he's saying, are you kidding? You are complaining that he's disregarding you. You know, he's just ignoring your troubles and your cause. Don't you know he's the creator of the ends of the earth? He does not grow faint, does not faint or grow weary. It's not that he's run out of strength and then he looks at you and he goes, oh, that's just, more than I'm able to cope with right now. That's just a bit too hard for me. He says, oh, come on, man. He doesn't grow faint or weary. Never. That's the world we know. And so we tend to look at God through that lens, don't we? Like we're tired of something and we're not sure we can, and God's probably the same. No, he's not. At all. Independent, infinite. He does not faint or grow weary. And his understanding is unsearchable. Infinite understanding. So don't think he's forgotten you. He literally can't forget you. Even if he wanted to, which he doesn't, thank God. But even if he wanted to, he couldn't. He's infinite in knowledge. Do you understand? Wow, this is God. And then he continues, and so he gives power to the faint. That you? And to him who has no might, he increases strength. Wow. Even the young men and women will faint and be weary, even though they're strong and, in the moment at least. And young men will fall exhausted, but those who wait for the Lord, this is where this verse, it's here in this context. Fantastic, eh? They who wait for the Lord. And he means those who are looking at God, trusting God, depending on God, shall renew their strength. He hasn't ignored you. He's not disregarding you. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint. Fantastic. This is who he is. It's his nature. It's his faithfulness. And this is why you can trust him. See, he's infinite, yet he commits himself to you. Look at this, another part in Isaiah 57. This is what the high and exalted one says. Independent, self-existent, infinite, eternal God. Him. This is what he says. He who lives forever, whose name is holy. He says, I live in a high and a holy place, but also with the one who is contrite and lowly in spirit, to revive the spirit of the lowly and to revive the heart of the contrite. Wow. This is his commitment to you. If you look at him, if you wait for him, wait on him, turn to him, trust him, give yourself to him, depend on him, look at him. Wow. This is his promise. He says, I'm with you. I'm with you. And I'll revive you. Thank God, huh? The infinite God, and yet he lives with us, in us. And he's committed himself to you. Wow. Now, look at Paul's words in Ephesians 3. To him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, according to the power at work in us. Yeah, far more abundantly. This is God. It's the God we serve. It's the God we know, the one we love. And then finally, God is eternal. And this is God's relationship to time. Psalm 90, you've been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were created, before you'd formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, no beginning, no end, you're God. This is his eternalness. And so God is not just the oldest one around. He's not just like really old, but he's outside of time. He created time. He sees everything all at once. 1 Timothy 6, God alone is immortal. You see that? Yeah. He alone is immortal. You say, well, I thought we were too. That's different. See, he's this. He's infinite according to time. You're not. Yeah, you will live forever. And we trust with him in peace and glory. But your eternality and his eternality are fundamentally different. He alone is immortal. And this is why God knows the future and the past and the present. It's all easy for him. He's outside of time. He can just see it all at once. No effort at all. He doesn't have to try to find things out. You know, to think back on the past. He doesn't have to go and research history on the internet. Or, you know, slip through to Wikipedia and figure out what happened, you know, back in the day. He just knows it perfectly, fully, totally. He doesn't have to guess about the future or ask the latest prophet, you know, what's coming up. He sees it all at once. Fantastic. See, we're so small in our thinking, aren't we? And we're so small in our understanding of the generations. We're so small in our understanding of the purposes of God. Here are the contrasts. God's self-existent. You're totally dependent. He's infinite. You're created. You're like tiny and weak. God is eternal. You're here but for a moment. But so that's our perspective. It's this narrow, tiny perspective. And so we think, this is the way we think, this is the way we act, that basically things, you know, pretty much began when we were born. And then spiritual things pretty much began when we were saved, yeah? And when we were saved, God made an individual, private relationship with me, and then since that time, that's been the main thing going on in the world. Come on, that's how we think, isn't it? And then we think that we're really being expansive if we, maybe think a little bit about our children and we hope that they do well too, I mean, that really stretches us, And that's about it for the generations. When in reality, God has been working with man from the beginning, and everything now is connected to everything that has gone before us. Yeah! Everything now is built on that foundation. And everything now is preparation for what's coming up. It's not just you in this moment. It's those who've gone before you. Your spiritual mothers and fathers, back for generations, who have prayed and labored and wept. See, that's what God sees. And everything that we do now, it's not just for ourselves and our generation, but everything now is preparation for the generations to come. That's what God sees. That's how we need to think. And when we think that way, it will change us, what we do, and particularly how we interact between the generations who are alive on the earth today. Do you understand? The worship team would come, please. But this is how God thinks. He's outside of time. He's outside of space. He sees it all as one present reality. That's what he sees. That's how he thinks. So we're looking at the generations. That's what he sees. He deals with the generations. Wow. Everything he does today in your life is from that perspective. It's integrated into this great, magnificent, sweeping purpose of God across the generations, from the past, the present, into the future. Lord, break us out of our narrowness. Yeah? See, look again at God's promise. I will establish my covenant, this is his promise to Abraham, as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God, to be the God of your descendants after you. Wow. This is who he is. This is how he relates to man, to us. Let's stand together, please. So next week, when we come together, let's come together before God, thinking about his self-existence, our dependence, his infinity, our dependence on him, our weakness, his eternality, our temporariness. Yeah? And let's interact with each other by the Spirit of God, looking at him, being changed by him, asking him to change our thinking, change our lives, change our perspective, change every part of our lives. Let's close our eyes, please. looking at him. Wow, so mighty, so magnificent, so faithful. He's the one that's committed himself to you. He's the one who's promised to be with you, to never leave you nor forsake you. It's him. Oh my goodness. Oh, he's the one who's given you the privilege of being a part of his purposes. Not just now, but his great eternal purpose. That's what you're a part of. Woo!